Hello, my fair friends. I'm Ruby Ruse. This is Baby Bunny, and welcome to Fairy Fortunes. On today's Fairy Fortune, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I had a couple of requests to talk about the cards and how Fairy Fortunes came to be. So, I'll start by saying that Fairy Fortunes are based on the divinational practice of Geomancy. Now, Geomancy was a popular divination system in the Renaissance era. The reason that it was popular at that time was that it was not considered as something as magic. It was actually considered as mathematical because the system relied very heavily on calculations. And so the church in the Renaissance era found this divinational system to be appropriate in some ways to keep practicing even if you were a devout Christian, because it was a science rather than magic. However, as the Fae would say, science and magic may in fact be the same very thing. I wanted to create a brand new divinational system for myself as a fairy. I wanted it to incorporate not just creatures like myself, but I wanted to feature other fairy creatures from around the world. Another element that I wanted to incorporate into the Fairy Fortunes was that my magic comes from my music, and so I wanted each of the Fairy Fortunes to incorporate some kind of musical element to it. And that was how I began. Now, geo is a word that is associated with the earth, and that, to me, spoke well for incorporating into the land of the Fae, because the Fae are most assuredly creatures from nature itself. The next character that I would like to talk about is Albus the Alicorn. Now, the alicorn is a British word for unicorn, and what's interesting about unicorns is that they traverse both the western and eastern worlds. They are one of the fairy creatures that are featured cross-culturally throughout the world. Now, there are other creatures. For instance, the Leshy shares a great deal in common with the satyr of ancient Greece. The Leshies are from Russia, and of course the satyrs are from Greece. Those characters do share a lot of commonalities, but the unicorn is one of those fairy creatures that the name, even the name, it has traversed culturally across that time. So Albus in Latin means white. So what does white mean? Often people associate white, much like they do with the unicorn. It is an energy of purity, it's an energy of peacefulness, and that is definitely an energy that resonates with the unicorn. So the best way to explain how Albus features in a fairy fortune reading is to share with you the song, and that goes, "The alicorn Albus observes, as a witness she listens, she serves. Her reason and rhyme bring peace sublime. Her duty is pure and preserves." So Albus is a card that refers to observation. It refers to taking time to really assess the situation. It's puer, in contrast, is really a symbol of action. It's about accepting a quest. It's about going forth. Albus the Alicorn, on the other hand, is a character that really wants you to remain a little bit more passive and take some time to assess the situation, which, if you think about it, goes very well with the energy of the unicorn, because the unicorn was very much a creature that you had to be observant to find. You had to take time and really be peaceful. Oftentimes the old stories would talk about young maidens being sent off into the forest, and they would simply sit quietly to see if a unicorn would appear and make themselves known to the young girl. So it's about passivity, about receptivity, about observation, and taking some time. And that symbol for Albus is 2 lines on the fire line, 2 dots on the air line, 1 dot on the water line, and 2 dots on the bottom line. And what's interesting about Albus is that Albus forms what looks like a little cup. So it's about filling the cup and considering what's inside of that cup. Not necessarily taking a drink yet, but being patient, and that's what Albus is all about. The final card in today's episode that I'd like to share with you is Populus, the Penantes. The Penantes is a being from ancient Greece. These were actually gods of the home. So when you had your home in ancient Greece, you would have an altar and give offerings to the Penantes that looked after your home and family. So Populus is very associated with the home and hearth. However, Populus is a card that suggests a diffused focus, which once again in all of the fairy fortune cards and also in Geomancy alone, Populus isn't necessarily a bad thing. To be unfocused is not necessarily a bad thing. It depends on the situation. If you are having a gathering, if you're feeling festive, if you're having trouble making a decision, perhaps when Populus shows up, what Populus is trying to tell you is that now is not the time to make the decision, that there needs to be a little bit more of a free spirit before a serious decision has been made. So the little song that goes with Populus the Penantes is, when Populus Penantes plays, the party can last many days. She's fond of the home, unlikely to roam, in comfort and pleasure she stays. So she represents pleasures, she represents parties, but if you are looking to make a decision and Populus makes an appearance in a significant position, Populus may be warning you that some more information needs to be gathered before a decision is made, because things have not yet fully come into focus. So the Geomancy representation of that is every single line has 2 dots. And what this shows is that actually what I didn't explain earlier, it's actually best to explain it with a figure like Populus. When you have only a single dot, that means sharp focus, that means intent, and when you have 2 dots, an even line, that means that things are more relaxed in that particular element. And in this case, each of the elements are very relaxed, and that is indicative of Populus's kind of free spirit, unfocused positioning. So not necessarily a bad thing in certain situations. So if you would like to learn more about the fairy fortune cards or Geomancy in general, I would invite you to visit the Fairy Fortunes website. That is www.fairyfortunes.com, and visit the blog. Each of these cards, the Puer the Puka, Amicio the Alfar, Albus the Alicorn, and Populus the Penantes, are currently featured on the blog. In addition to telling a little bit more about these creatures and how they correlate to the card and what they might mean in a reading, there is also a list of books, both fiction and nonfiction, to help you learn more about these creatures. In addition to that, I would like to share with you one of my very favorite geomancy books that was written by a human, a modern-day human, and that is The Art and Practice of Geomancy by John Michael Greer. I highly recommend this book. It's one of my favorites on the practice of geomancy, so if you're curious to know more about geomancy, this, I think, is one of the best resources that you can get to learn about geomancy, the history of it, and learning how to start a practical application. And until next time, have a faithful day.